Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 2:07. So we definitely want to make sure that most everybody is here. Folks will continue to come in, but in the meantime, welcome everybody to our final session of the WBL Institute for this calendar year and for basically the fall winter season. So I hope you guys are getting into the spirit. We definitely are looking forward to hopefully some rest and some relaxation in the next few weeks. But we want to close out the year on a high note. And we've had so many people register for this session, so we're really excited. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Moving to the next slide. Uh, Today we have Desmond Jardine presenting, as well as Todd Francis from CTE WBL team. Myself and my cohort, Larry Fleming Williams, will also be supporting today's workshop. So we definitely look forward to seeing you guys. If you're not on camera, please feel free to come on. Moving to the next slide. Again, this is one of the sessions of the WBL Institute. And, we do hope that you're going to continue to join us for more workshops starting in January. This is not the end. We have workshops scheduled almost every Wednesday for the remainder of the year. So we definitely are hopeful that you will look at the content, which is going to be coming out this week, which will tell you what's coming up in the winter and the spring. So we definitely want you to register and to keep coming. Your feedback has been invaluable, and we're continuing to make tweaks based on everything that we're getting in the exit tickets. So we're really excited. We will be launching the updated calendar, like I said, this week. So please look out for that. And if you want to get a jump start on registration, even better. So this definitely is going to continue, and we just appreciate and thank you for all your support in the last few months. We started in October, and we're ending today, like I said, on a high note, but we do hope that you are going to continue to spread the word and get more of your colleagues to come in and register for sessions. So moving to the next slide. Once again, our meeting norms, we definitely want people to participate, whether you are here because you're a work-based learning coordinator, or you are a CTE teacher, or you're an AP or a principal or guidance, or anyone who works in the schools. We appreciate all that you do, and what you provide us, your input is so useful. So we do want to make sure that we reiterate that we want to hear from you. We're really hopeful that everybody's going to be present while they're here, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to be on camera, but it does mean that we do want you to speak up and to really digest the content. We encourage you to speak up if you do want to, or engage in the chat. People have been doing that so far, and we are very grateful for that as well. And then last but not least, please don't leave without completing the exit survey. We do want your feedback. We utilize everything you tell us, and what you tell us is what is shaping the content for the future. So please, please, please don't leave without doing that. And if you do leave without doing it, we will be sending it out later so that we don't miss anyone. And so moving right along, I am going to pass the baton over to Desmond Jardine to take us through the agenda.
Thank you so much, Takia. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy, holidays and happy pre-snowstorm. It's not, I don't see anything out the window yet. So got a few minutes till we're actually snowed in. Again, I just want to, thank you guys for taking the time to spend this afternoon with us to just kind of go over some of what ISP 2020 looked like, just what this experience was for the year. And, I think the goal for today is to, one, review some of what happened, some of what we did, some of what we learned in terms of best practices and resources, and some of the things that we're, able to put into fruition for next year and the next iteration of things and looking forward. We did have a goal of having an open conversation a bit later on in terms of best practices, even as well from you guys. So that's the goal for today, is really just to share, kind of go through some of the things that we've seen and things that we hope can help everybody, just make 2021 an even more successful year, to say. um, than this year was. Can we get the next slide, please? So, the most important piece, the first piece, a million thank yous. I think there are so many people to thank. It'd almost be easier to just say who I don't need to thank, and there's really only one person. That'd be number 45, but that's about it. Everybody else, I mean, literally starting with Trevor for like just the work that she did to reimagine and reinvent ISP for the summer space. Literally every team within OPSR, right? Like the PQ team, the IEMs, Sims, 9 to 14, um, just literally everyone, all the teachers, all the coordinators, everyone who has put themselves in this process to continue to help students in this space. I applaud you. I appreciate you. I thank you. I don't know if you've heard it enough, but the work that you've done in this year over the course of 2 school years essentially has not only been invaluable for the education of the students, but literally for the health of the country. Um, serious, serious, serious. So all that to say, good looking out. Appreciate you. I would buy you a drink, but it's too many of you. Next slide, please. So, in terms of reflecting and thinking back, like I would like to say again, when we look at what 2020 has been, um, everything that we thought we knew, everything that we thought could and could not happen, has basically shifted. And thinking back, I would like us to kind of be in a space of looking back and just thinking, okay, at the start of this, right? Like in February of 2020, when I really had no idea what was happening or whatever, and just the world was starting to shake, right? Like we grabbed everything, we ran out, right? We all kind of huddled in that space. And again, we can throw it in the chat. You can, unmute yourself in that space. But I'd just like you to think about these questions. Like, what's one thing that you used to do that you no longer do, right? We've been kind of huddled in for a while, right? Was there a new habit or tradition that you started? Is there something that you thought you needed that you haven't used? Or is there a challenge that you didn't expect and how have you met it? So I think, again, just to kind of get us into a little bit of a vibe for the first few minutes, if we have any volunteers, I would love to hear your feedback on this, right? Like, what's one thing that you kind of, something that's changed for you in this year that you didn't anticipate? Somebody started working out. I'm with it. I'm with it. Let's see what else we got in the chat. I kind of work out, but I feel you. Okay, I'll try to speak louder. The daily ride on the 4 train, I do not miss the train. I feel you. I do not know if when I'll be prepared to ride the train again consistently. Um, but also, good point. My daughter, 4 years old, she actually misses the train because she misses going up and down the stairs and seeing people, right? Taking a boat to work. Whoa. Okay. Watch workouts. Yes, I guess walking workout counts. I'll take that one. Um, Anybody else? A challenge that you didn't expect? I think for me, an interesting challenge is working from home. I anticipated I would have a lot more time to do things than I do. Right? Like again, I don't have the train station. I don't have to do all these movement, but somehow 9 to 5 is even more busy than I thought it would be. Um, Back pain, yeah. Hands, listen, y'all see, you see what I'm saying? I has heard the blue blockers. I heard those work. Um, yeah. So, again, I think with all of these things, right? If we see it in the chat, we've all experienced such unexpected shifts. So many different things have moved for us, right? So much of what we thought the planet was going to be. I mean, even literally like getting tired of Netflix because I've watched everything, buying Disney Plus and actually running through Disney Plus like a madman. Um, just all these different things have shifted in the space of a year. And the funniest part is at some point they're going to have to shift back, right? But thank you all for these reflections. Um, yeah, I'm with it. Next slide, please. So as we think about some of the things that have changed in our own lives and in our practice and in our, just the way that we've been doing things, let's kind of think back also just to like how you, the community that we built for our students has shifted in service of our students, right? Like literally this whole space has been 2 school years, right? Like it's been one continuous shift from last spring, summer, if you want to count it as a break, but it really didn't break anything into this school year, right? So you're really talking about lessons learned and reapplied in a very short cycle. physically distribution of how many, like think about it, the physical distribution of entire school infrastructure out into the city, the distribution of the school, like the entire DOE personnel infrastructure back into the city. The fact that we were able to, and this is what I'm saying, we all of these things came out of need, but look at the networks, look at the amazing things that have come out of this space. I've actually seen more of you through these sessions than I had ever in the first year that I had in doing site visits and visiting whatnot, right? Like the way that we've been able to build community in this spaces due to need and out of, just some of the most harrowing conditions you can imagine, we've actually kind of created a really new and profound foundation, right? The WBL Institute, the CTE calendar, something that I know people have talked about for years, but it's now like really, it's embedded. Now it's not only is it a thing, like it's very real for us, right? The WBL grid, like the CTE user experience, I should say experience, not experiential. I apologize for that typo. But when we think about just all of the things that we've been able to put in play in this year, strictly out of need, that now are going to actually possibly help us be better, right? I think that's the thing that's so key about it, right? Like it's not just the survival piece. We're going to possibly go from surviving to living based off this, and I'm hoping for it. Fingers crossed. But next slide, please. Again, which all goes back to the thank yous. Like you guys did amazing work. One of the places where in terms of my work and my interaction with you guys, that we really saw so much of this was ISP Summer, right? Again, starting with, just the leadership from the top, really reimagining, committing to making sure that the experience for the students happened, right? The world fell off the axis. We could have not had any internships. People fought for this. You fought for this. You protected the students. You protected that, that stream of connectivity. And again, aside from just being a survival mechanism for the mental health of our kids, something actually worked. Something worked really well. And I think that's the part that's so profound. One of the pieces of evidence we see of it is actually the employer surveys, right? Now, just again, looking at these two pieces of feedback, over 80% saw either some or marked improvements in the students' technical skills. 75% showed improvement in either some or marked improvement in time management, right? Not only is that big because it's technical and executive skills, right? The students are actually going deep into these places. And the fact that it's 8 out of 10 tells us just how widespread the student ability to engender themselves into, I'm sorry, not understand engender, to see themselves in this program, absorb what we asked them to do, and actually take it to a level where they grew within it is actually a really important thing. And, that comes from program design, but that also comes from, and I think I'll show this in the next slide, that comes from you guys, right? So again, going all the way back to the thank yous. Thank you again. Next slide, please. More employer survey feedback, overall improvement, 80%, 65% shared alternative, saw that students shared alternative ideas. For me, this 65% is huge because it doesn't mean that only 65% of the students had other ideas to share, not at all. The way I read this is that 65% of our students found such confidence in the remote internship space and in the work that they were able to do, and so much connectivity in their internship experiences, that they actually were able to take the risk to leverage a new idea in a professional space, right? That's profound for interns. That's profound for staff, like period, right? Like, let's be real. We're looking at the national stage right now. You got grown adults who won't tell a person that he'd been lost a month ago. And we had 65% of our students find it within themselves, in the programming, in the placements, in the supports. I don't know if I thank grant associates ahead of time, but I also want to thank you guys a lot. Like, again, you guys just built so much of this. I'll get back to the more thank yous later, because again, I know you guys are here. Appreciate you for everything you did in this space. But yeah, 65% of our students found it within themselves to be so connected, so deeply in tune with the job, that they were like, you know what? I think I can actually help you do something better. That's deep. That's deep. I don't care what nobody else says. I'll live and die on that stat. That's big to me. Next slide, please. Just to reiterate, again, it's one thing to see it from the employer side. Oh, the employers say they see this, but they only interact with the student through a computer screen for a couple hours a week. Coming back from the student side, again, students felt the same connectivity, right? If you're looking at it, 90-something percent, talk about time management. Again, Executive functioning. Look at how many students are talking about the changes that they notice in their own executive functioning skills, right? Um, Improving and practicing in writing and just those skills, understanding the need to improve in writing, and then actually seeing an improvement in that, right? It's almost more than half of that. For me, the most important stat in here is that 95% of the students felt supported by their RIMs, um, especially in helping them manage their intern related challenges and their deadlines, right? So that tells me two things really important. Number one, almost universally, the students felt like we had their back. They knew we had their back. We knew we wanted them to be successful, and they knew that we would help them get to that success. It also told us the two areas that they felt they needed the most help, whether they knew it or not, which is just having challenges, but also time management and getting to better executive functioning. Right. So, again, information that we can work with, work on, improve with, but also just knowing that from the student feedback, this really worked, right? Like students felt supported even though they were in their home and away from us. They felt like, we tried to create a space for them to succeed, but they also felt like they were able to succeed in a cyber work experience that happened exclusively in this box. Like, think about that from them. We talked about that with the students there, and I'll get to that in a bit. Their entire experience with us for the course of a year has been that box, and they were still able to find time, space, connectivity, and improvement in something that will help them gain confidence in their career prospects moving forward. Um, Thank you all. Everybody was part of that. You guys rocked. Next slide, please. uh, from the ISP process, from the ISP program, and just from the summer, one of the things that we were able to kind of pull together and wanted to make sure that we shared out with you guys is, our ISP best practices, right? Um, Again, pulling in the content, pulling in the information from the surveys, and just also anecdotal information. You know, these are some of the things that we're going to highlight that we found worked. Next slide, please. All right. So one of the main things that we want to make sure is that, as we said, helping students, one of the things that came up a lot was helping students understand the need for time management and how better to do that, right? Like, time management is less of a skill than it is a behavior, right? Like, how do you get into those places? What are the things you need to do? How do you set yourself up for that set? A second piece that we really saw in terms of the key takeaway, for us, I'll say this. One key takeaway is that expectation setting, and we're going to see this throughout, expectation setting is key, right? I can't know you know something unless I told you. That's, what the whole Reagan era, true, trust yet verify. I can't trust you know unless I verify that I told you, straight up, right? Any student, anything about time management? Did I tell you to do this? No, then you didn't know, right? I don't care if I saw it in an email. Did I tell you? Yeah. Okay, then I know you know. So it puts a different onus in terms of making sure that we clearly communicate to the student what the expectations are. But once that's done, reminding them that now we expect them to carry that torch moving forward. Um, but not setting up to fail. Check in consistently, right? Like, if they forget, but they know they're going to see you twice a week, it creates that pathway for proper communication, and it also prevents things from kind of falling off the rails you um before you can kind of help bring it back. Next slide, please. Same concept with employers, right? Even though these people have built companies and built careers and are, fully functioning adults, that does not mean that they're experts in dealing with young adults or helping young adults manage tasks in an internship or workplace challenge setting, right? That being said, again, managing the expectations to say, this is kind of what it needs to be. This is what we're asking for. But then also understanding that, especially in this space, what we've asked of the employers, and another massive thank you to Grant and all the other intermediaries for helping facilitate this change and ask for the employers, right? Like, it's one thing to ask somebody to kind of physically manage a student in a space while they might be doing something of importance. It's another thing to ask employers to now start to critically think about aspects of their job that can be transferred to a student in cyberspace. So now, again, the types of assignments, the types of commitment, the types of interactivity are now all higher level, right? So we're asking employers to engage students in an executive functioning space, which immediately changes the way that the student's relationship with the company and the employer and the work happens, right? Like again, you stuffing in an envelope might be important, right? But you working on my database is so much, not even saying more important, but like, a misstep or this, that, the next can have such different repercussions that now understanding the importance of really focusing and doing these things and being proper, it changes the context of the experience for the student. And being able to convince employers to do that has been key. And we want to just be mindful of that, right? But within that space, what we're also doing is we're taking the pressure off employers to have to overthink things, right? So the whole point is once we set the expectations, once we clarify some of the asks, we also got to the place of saying, okay, what are some of the tools we might need to help facilitate that moving forward, right? Um, Next slide, please. So the other piece is, again, in managing out the time and space, part of it is almost modeling the behavior that we want them to model to the student, right? So we want to make sure that we're providing them guidance. We want to make sure that we set up the parameters around how many check-ins they have with the students, what sort of follow-up happens, how they set up a flow. If we set up that sort of a flow with them, it becomes easier for them to mimic it for the students, and therefore easier for the students to pick up and kind of push those things forward, right? Like again, in this space, especially in the remote space, especially the most important things that we can teach students and help students reinforce are those executive functions, right? It's that critical thinking, is that problem solving, is the engagement, and it's the time management piece. All of that is really high level stuff that we can't necessarily push, we can only influence, but we have to model that influence in order for it to really work. Next up, next slide, please. Lastly, in terms of just some of the best practices that we saw, and I mean, this is just a general need, is do what you can at the outset to manage tech. Again, reminding the employers or community partners that students really aren't supposed to be using a lot of their technology for the job, especially cell phones, right? Like things like that become an issue. But then make sure the students have what they need, just playing that intermediary role at the beginning, but also managing the number of students in an internship. We found that 3 students per site is the sweet spot, because again, one, employers, even if they've worked with students multiple times, working with them in the remote space is different in terms of the challenges that we're asking them to engage in. But then also, crucially, it's just like anything else. If you're managing 10 people, you can't give them the sort of focus that you can if you're managing 2 or 3, right? So we find that 3 students could create a team within that so that, it can help streamline or at least create economy and scale in terms of asking an employer to say, hey, can you 3 do something, right? So you can build in team and individual aspects to kind of facilitate the work for the employer, but it also creates a good balance in terms of supervision that we're asking of the employer with the students, right? If we're asking them to check in with each kid 3 times a week in some way, shape, or form, 15 check-ins for volunteers is a lot, right? Next slide, please. So, from the conversation of ISP, kind of want to transition a bit because one of the other things that we want to talk about are the resources that we've been able to put together, throughout this year, right? Again, we're talking about a long march that we've had since last March, literally, right? So some of this stuff is actually specific to the ISP summer, and I'll kind of indicate that stuff. But other stuff is just things that we've been working on that we want to kind of make sure that you guys remember and know is here for you in the remote space. Next slide, please. So I'm sorry, could you go back one? I didn't actually upload this. I think I'm working on an older deck. First thing to remind you guys, the WBL toolkit. We actually do have a tab on the toolkit for remote resources. If someone can just drop the link to the toolkit in the chat, it should be, I think, in the comment section, but if not, I'll find it later. But basically, please remember, you guys know where the WBL toolkit is. We have the online resources there. Please remember, we also have the Lunch and Learn resources from last spring break. That includes the interviews as well as the activities that students can do that, just help, just again, kept students thinking about career readiness, kept students thinking about like future prospects, but it's also a great engagement tool for students to basically really start to connect to interview prospects as well as like the lunch and learn conversations and just further programming, right? Like the key to all of this is that student engagement was the linchpin, right? Students were thirsting for some connectivity, something that made them feel connected to the adults, city, programming, everything, right? So we want to just make sure that those things keep flowing. Next slide, please. Right. The experiential directory. I want to thank Todd for kind of spearheading this. So we will be dropping also in the chat shortly the link for the experiential directory. This is something that we've been working on for a while. It is updated at least quarterly. And it's meant to be time sensitive, right? Like this is that hot press, right? The opportunities that show up in here um, basically should all count for nights of approval, but more importantly than that, they're all really, really cool, time sensitive, and they're available for young people in high school, post grad opportunities. Like it again, we're just trying to make sure that the resources and the links to things are available to students and to coordinators. This is technically a coordinator facing document. And again, we're trying to keep the link the same so that folks can just kind of go back to this repeatedly. But the goal with using this document is to say, let's say, you know, you may have just some activities that'll happen that whether or not they count for, you know, credit, so to speak, are just really edifying experiences that young people need to get themselves thinking about their next step and actually be prepared for it. All right. Next slide, please. Another thing that we want to remind you guys that we have actually had in place for a little while, but we've been working to really just kind of make sure it's available to you and good, is the Level Up kind of pre-internship work series, right? If you can actually go to the next slide, you can see the full agenda for it. Next slide, please, sir. And the Level Up pre-internship system is essentially it's meant to be sort of a quick on ramp to getting students prepared for an interview, right? Um, so, yeah, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. I just want to be able, yeah, perfect. So as you see, like the lesson one is really how a student gets started. It's about self-assessment, figuring out who they are, what they want, kind of, you know, learning some stuff about communication and even getting into their elevator pitch, right? By the second session in this particular work series, we get to resume development, but it's not simply like, here's the format, plug in the resume, right? The 3T assessment piece is really about tools, tasks, and what tangible things you put together, right? So we really want the students to start asking themselves, what are the things that I'm good at doing? What are the things I'm good at using? How do I use those things to like something? And what is the something I produce, right? So we really want students to think about all parts of their capability, because we also know that so much of what a student is interested in is based off of the things that they're good at. And so many things that they're good at doing don't end up on their resume because they don't see it as work related, right? But the truth is, you know, an artisan can create a great career if someone shows them that, you know, your desire to like cut pieces of wood can turn into something fantastic. Or, you know, a student who happens to code on the side may not realize that that thing can become a career, you know, desire if they connect to it in certain ways. So the Level Up platform that we built out, and again, we created I don't say a web friendly version, but the version that we have was kind of tweaked for the remote space. But the great thing about it is that it also has ways inside. It has a PDF of the presentation. There is a facilitator guide and a student workbook. The workbook can be done online or, you know, just as a Word document. But when we do eventually, knock on wood, get back in the classrooms, all of these tools, all of these resources can also just be done face to face in classroom, right, on, you know, on site. So we wanted to make sure that we had kind of evergreen resources for, you know, everyone, right? Um, and you know, my thing about the Level Up piece is, again, we're helping students just get themselves prepared for interview, right? That's the key ramp up for this piece, and we'll kind of connect that a bit more later. Next slide, please. Well, later is now. So one of my colleagues, Matt Brito from Grain Associates, is on the call. Matt, it's my bro. We've been working together for actually the last 2 summers for the CTES program, CT Summer Scholars Program. With the transition to the remote spaces, CTES was able to kind of test the theory of a lot of the work that we've been doing, right? And especially in terms of some of the level up work series that we've put together, um, we were able to meet a lot of those same aims and take what Level Up was and model it out into our CTES platform. Slightly different look over 6 or 8, was it 9 sessions fully? But over the course of especially the 6 summer sessions, what we were able to do was a setup for the students to give us same sort of deliverables that you would get out of Level Up that helped them prepare for their interviews that came in the fall internship season, right? So in our process, we had the students do an updated resume. They did an introductory email to their supervisor. They did a quarterly sales email, and I'll go into the quarterly sales email in a second. They did a LinkedIn profile. They did college choice research, which included picking the top schools, picking top programs in the top schools, finding essay scholarship information, and starting to outline essay drafts, right? All of this was done in conjunction over the summer with them also doing work in college now course, right? So it was a big ask to some degree. It was spaced out, but the point is that the students were willing and able to do the work, do it at a high level, and really turn it back to us and create a community even in the CTES space, right? So even things like Level Up and the resources that we have are all about helping students find that shared space together as we work towards career planning. The quarterly sales email, I think for me was one of the most fun parts because that email, like so basically the task was that the students had to send an email back to us as if they were an employee. And the email has to tell us that our quarterly sales have dropped some significant percentage. The task was not just about sending an email about the bad news, but as we instructed them, for every piece of bad news, you now have to find at least one possible solution to leverage for the future. And again, some of the students jumped right into it. They gave us new names and created companies and had 4 or 5 different like sales pitches for how we were going to get out of this quarterly slump. Um, that to say that again, the students I think were excited to be able to fill a space, and that space, that mental space that we were able to have them come up with in terms of being creative, asking for that connectivity, asking for them to challenge themselves, they were able to really step up to the challenge, and we appreciate it. And they killed it. Yes, thank you, Matt. They killed it. They did an amazing job this summer. But it's because we asked them. The students are ready. They're there. They want you to see them, even if they don't want to turn on their cameras. Um, Next slide, please. So, returning to the idea of resources and following up on the information that we've gotten for folk and best practices. As I said, one of the things that we realized over the summer was the idea of expectation setting, right? If I didn't tell it to you, if I didn't show it to you, I cannot truthfully expect that you know it, whether you're an adult or a child. So one of the things that we came up with as a possible intervention for that is the WBL cheat sheet. The goal of the cheat sheet is literally a one pager that anyone can pull up, again, whether it's on their screen or printed out in person, that has some of the key information that they need all in one place for their experience, right? So in the top left, you have SMART goals. I'll go into that in a second. Middle, just the basic student information. Top right, you see a place for the student to put the student or the employer to put the student's work schedule, right? Bottom left corner, key dates in terms of interventions, training plans, et cetera, but also spaces for the payroll dates, right? We know that students don't remember the payroll calendar. We know how important these things are. And we also know that so much of the email traffic that students will generate will be reminders about this. So again, it's all in one spot. They have nothing to ask. Center bottom is space for the student's training plan objectives to be placed. Again, if it's all in one page document that I see frequently, the likelihood that I actually engage the goals in my training plan might go up, right? And then finally, bottom right corner, hyperlinks to all of the student and employers necessary videos and login information, right? Really quickly, going back to the top left corner, We'll go into this in a bit more detail in January. We're going to kind of go into more about the workplace challenge. One of the things that we started to do in terms of expectation and framing was really say to ourselves, okay, what are some of the, what's a nice little tool that we can give to really help employers think about the way that they frame the internship experience and the goal of the internship experience, right? So we kind of took something that everybody knows, SMART goals, and we tweaked it just a little bit, right? So S meaning significant. As we said in the employer orientation, significant does not mean that you give the student something that can make or break your company, right? It does not mean that you have to give the student the security clearance that they can now, wipe out everybody's social security numbers. What it does mean is that you have to explain the significance of every task that a student does in the larger stream of things. So the example that I gave is that in some jobs, again, we just left the political season. In every political campaign, there is a person who has to stuff 5 million envelopes and put them in the mail. Person has to do it. Someone has to do it. Not an exciting job, not a fun job, not a job that anybody really wants to say that they sat down and did. However, if I miss a thing and now I put, all the A's and the B's and it just cascades down, if I didn't do that job well, the significance of my error is tremendous on that candidate, on that person. So again, reminding the student that even a job that may seem minuscule actually has significance as part of the larger system is an important thing for them to do. The M, measurable, speaks for itself. A, achievable. I think another key thing. Yes, students may come into a river, like in terms of coming in a point in time and the river may move on. But in terms of student, not just a mental health thing, but achievement, it's good to know that you did a task, right? It's good to know that, okay, I did this part, this is what it is, it stands alone. If the student has to participate something that's part of a continuum, it's harder for them to gauge what their work was, right? If they can say, okay, this is the start and end, they can compare it to things. I think, again, it helps the student understand the impact that they can have and seek to have more. R, rhetoric. Rhetoric not being in terms of what they say, but the actual act of developing rhetoric, developing an argument, being able to convince people with an argument. Again, being that we're working in a remote space, the need of a student to be able to convince people of things and to create a high level argument becomes greater, right? And then finally, T for the tangible, what can a student either hold or produce and say, this is what I did, but also where can the idea of team or teamwork and how that intersects become part of the experience, right? So just to kind of, again, help in the framing and the setting of this thing, one, what the goals and the language around expectations are, but then two, the actual cheat sheet. Again, one tool gives you a twofer, right? That's something that came out of the experiences that we had and learned from everybody over the summer. Next slide, please. And this is something that, is facing student and employer. The next thing that we wanted to come up with was the actual check-in log. Again, it's not the official timesheet, but in terms of setting expectations, creating a communication style and creating expectations in terms of what clarity of instructions are, this is one of the things we thought would be a very simple, very low entry point for folk to be able to get to that. Another key piece of it, as you may see, is that it has expected time to completion versus actual time of completion. One of the things we saw in the remote space was that students, an employer might say, hey, I need you to do this thing and want to credit a student 2 hours for it. The student would come back and counter and say, hey, it took me 6 hours to get this thing done because of whatever, situations or reasoning. And now we would have a conundrum, right? The student said it took 6 hours. The employer said it only should take 2. If we have them using this document, that now becomes a conversation, right? It's not a question of whether it was or not. It becomes a question of, well, why do I think it would take 2 hours and why did it actually take 6? So maybe we can now create a better string so we can more accurately read what task management is. But, for those who want to take it to a higher level, now you can use it as a really powerful supervision tool to say, all right, how do you approach problem solving? How did you approach the task? Let's see if the way that I approached it and the way that you approach it are the same, and you can create almost that, I won't say that mentorship piece, but it can create a higher level conversation around how students approach the ways of work. Next slide, please. So at this point, what we wanted to do is again kind of just those are some of the things that we've been able to come up with, right? Those are some of the tools and interventions that we have over this course of this year said, hey, these are problems that we bucked up on. This is where, the glass was for me. And this is how I figure we can kind of push through to the other side. Or say, when I say I mean the team. These are the solutions and interfaces that we were able to develop. What we'd like now is, to kind of open the space up a bit and ask you guys, right? Like, what are some of the successes that you found in this space that we have may not have heard about, like, and we would just really like you to elevate now. One, to give yourself the pat on the back, but two, um, because you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. But two, so that if there's an intervention, if there's a way, if there's a methodology that we don't know yet that can actually help us be better, this is the time to share it, right? So yeah, if anyone, any brave souls, or also most important, is there something you see that you think we all need to be looking at, right? I'll say, for me, just personally, having come from, fell in love with Google Classroom. I feel you. Google Classroom is a beast. It scares me how intuitive it can be, and I'm really wondering about, like, once all this lands, just how much more deeply ingrained it's going to be in our, like, education system. Anything else? Anybody else? Thank you, Tiffany, for that. Or I should say, Miss Santiago. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Engagement tool that's been successful, an engagement tool that hasn't really worked. Has anybody been able to get the kids to turn the camera on? Like, literally. Um, okay, right. Email intervention is always a really interesting challenge. Yes. Remote verification. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's keep it going, folks. I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Remote verification for students when they get working papers without being. Okay, so that is a good issue to keep note of on the horizon, right? The issue of working paper, issue of working papers. And yeah, yeah, the kids and their tech abilities, tech savvy kids. So in terms of the tech, I'm always really curious about that. Like, are there apps that they're really good at, or is it just like a general lack of knowledge of how to use a computer? Cool. So like, technology in hand, they're more social media savvy than tech savvy in general. True. And then students with printing working papers. Absolutely. I concur with all those things. Any other concerns? Like, please, like, I think the horizon, they love ever. Okay, cool. Working papers. Got another one. Tech issues. Persisting through problem. Persisting. Right. Right. Oh my God. Yes, people. Yes. Yes. Throw it in the chat. Yes. Email etiquette as part of the curriculum. Absolutely. So another beautiful thing, Level Up starts to touch it. We'll definitely try to add more to this, really reinforcing again for the students some of the basic skills about the email, right? Like, always the, hello, always the greeting, always the Mr. Mrs. Yeah, just some of those simple things. It's really remarkable. Again, we have practiced this so many times that we may forget that the students, I literally, I think I told people this a year ago. I was shocked. I thought the kid was trolling me because I showed him an email on my phone and was saying, all right, let's reply right now. And the kid looked at me like I had three heads on. He's saying, you can do that? I said, yeah, you can just hit this button that says reply, and then we can type a message. And I genuinely thought the student was trolling me. But again, the student had never, they had not used email technology consistently, and they never actually engaged email through their phone, right? So it really becomes this interesting thing about, like, what technologies the students use, how they use it, and what they don't know about the technology that it can do. All right. Breakout rooms in Zoom are definitely one of the most amazing things that have come around in a long time. Uh, so okay, most difficult is getting remote internships. Yes. So the remote internship shift is something that we will be kind of going into a little bit deeper in our January PD, right? So actually, Larry, can you throw me to the next slide? I think that's kind of where we're going to. Right. So what we're working on. So what we're working on for the next PD in January is literally all the stuff around the remote internship. Part of it, yes. So part of it is going to be the actual workplace guide, and that's going to be, a guide around like I would say the minutia, but the actual details around like the week to week, how things have to work, how you want to administer things, and I'll have a few different levels of information. Next slide, please. So again, in terms of the remote internship stuff and like setting that up, that is coming. That's stuff that we're going to be talking about in January. Some other things that we want to make you all aware of for ISP 2021, right? Is that, as I'm sure you guys saw this in the email, Grant Associates will be the sole intermediary for all 8 sectors, right? Only Perkins 5 eligible programs can participate in CTE ISP, but that is also why, again, we want to just stress, we cannot stress this enough. We are committed to working with all CTE programs. That's why we have come up with all the open resources that we can. That's also why we're, doing the WPC rollout the way that we are, right? We want to give you as many opportunities as possible to develop programming that still counts towards your hours, that will still just really help students have a fully rounded experience, even if you're not a fully, an official Perkins 5 student yet. Um, so another big thing for ISP is staying remote, right? I think in terms of looking forward, looking to the future, if we can anticipate that people are going to, the mainstay of New Yorkers are not going to have an opportunity to be vaccinated until the end of summer, we can't anticipate that, we can get a student into an on-site internship before even next fall, right? Like just to be pragmatic, as a system, beyond that, I can't speak to it. Um, but just from a general pride, safety thing, it's going to be remote. And because of, just the pressure of graduation, we are going to be prioritizing seniors again for the ISP internships. As you can see, the sectors that are going to be represented in the internships, as well as the sectors that are going to be represented in the workplace challenges. Um, Next slide, please. So just to kind of go through the ISP timeline briefly, December 16th is when students need to start applying for ISP, right? January 20th is application deadline for students participating in remote internships. February 1st is internship start for cohort 1. And as you can see, the sectors are IT, media, tech, and design. March 1st is the start for cohort 2. And again, business finance, hospitality, engineering, and architecture and robotics. March 10th will be the application deadline for students reporting participating in remote workplace challenges. And then April 5th would be the start of the workplace challenges. So another key thing about sharing this timeline information is that we want to help you, we want to give you time to start strategizing which students need to participate in which experiences, right? So we can get everybody uploaded in the CTS, have them do their applications through the CTS system, and just really make sure that they're up on their P's and Q's at that point. Let's see. Okay. Um, Next slide, please. So I see Trevor's going through so many things in the chat. Cool. So also, at this point, we just wanted to have a quick reminder, when you guys upload this deck, all of the resources that you see here, this is all hyperlinked. So everything that we discussed, all of the PowerPoint, the directory, the level up into the series, the draft of the cheat sheet, and the workflow are out there. Just to, again, in terms of those 2 last documents being drafted, the employer cheat sheet and the work log, there's something that, again, we came up with based off of our feedback from the summer sessions. We are actually beta testing them currently in the C-test program. Like literally, my partner Matt will tell you, we've sent them out to employers, asked them kind of feedback, asked them how they work. We're still really just trying to refine that process, and it will be something that's available to everybody as of January for the workplace, as part of the workplace challenge guide, et cetera, right? So really, we're trying to come up with things that we can turnkey now that, as we said, are useful in the remote space, but will also continue to be useful in the non-remote space. I don't even know what we call that anymore, the real world. Um, yeah, so at this point, oh, sorry, next slide, please. I think we have one more thing we wanted to discuss. Right. The last thing that we kind of wanted to bring back to you guys, um, one of the key things that, it only makes sense. We can't know how best to serve you if we don't know what your concerns are, right? One of the avenues that we had for really making sure that that conversation continued to happen in a really clear and effective way was the WBL Advisory Council, right? Monthly call-in meeting. Again, we all live in Zoom anyway, so hopefully, folk can find it to participate in it. Um, Once a month, 1 or 2 hours to provide feedback on WBL initiatives, but also just to continue to make sure that we have our finger on the pulse of what's happening for you guys, right? So this year, my colleague Todd Francis is going to be facilitating that. So if you are interested, please, please, please email Todd Francis. His email is on the slide, tfrancis24 at schools.nyc.gov. Um, yeah. So with that, can we go to the next slide, please? So if you would please press play. I don't know if any of you watched John Oliver. So yes, I don't know if all of you needed to see this as much as I needed to see this when I saw it. Um, but basically, yeah, the presentation is to a close. I just wanted to really thank you guys again for being such tremendous supports to each other, to the students, to the families, and for really, really, really just making this year, which has been um, the most profound decade of my life, but really making this year something that has not been the trauma that it could have been, and really helping, allowing us to find a real vein of gold in providing services to you. So again, happy holidays. Please, if you have any other questions in the chat, but just wanted to say, appreciate you all. No exit ticket right now. I actually did not create one. Well, no, so I'm sorry. The WBL Institute exit ticket is coming. But aside from that, please enjoy yourself. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much, Desmond. We really appreciate all the important content and information. And, we want to make sure that you guys know what is coming. So, of course, the exit ticket link is on the screen. We'll go ahead and put it in the chat as well. And then, of course, there's the resource folder where most of the documents that were featured are already there. We want to make sure that folks who registered but couldn't get to today's session also are able to receive that content. So we'll be sending out an email following today with the slides, the recording, and of course, the resources. And, we just want to echo everything that Desmond said. We just thank you guys so much for your time and attention, for being with us, sometimes every other week, for providing feedback, for making sure that you guys are, giving us your ideas and your thoughts through the exit ticket. And, like I said before, we are going to have additional sessions coming up. And we do look forward to seeing you in the new year. So if there are things that we can do that will be helpful for you, over the break, whether it's, re-releasing, the session content from October, we will also do that. So you can find those in a handy folder. And then also just in terms of what's coming up, we do want to make sure that for those people who have not been attending, we're finding out, the reasons why maybe it hasn't worked out for you to be here, or for folks, who could be here and not here. And so one big announcement is that we're going to be moving the time for these to 2:30. Obviously, overwhelming feedback through not just our exit ticket, but office hours, letting us know that 2:30 is actually more convenient than 2 o'clock. So we do want to make sure that it's going to work for everybody to be here. So as of the next session, we will be starting a half an hour late. Just put the exit ticket in the chat. And for those of you who are leaving out to do other things or taking time off, be safe. Try to enjoy as much as you can the season. And moving to the last slide, here's the contact information for folks who you might want to follow up with for different reasons. And happy holiday season to you all. Please feel free to ask any more questions. We're here for another 10 minutes or so. If you do need to speak up, you can unmute yourselves. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you guys in January.
Hi, thank you for all the valuable information. I was just wondering if you can also put the resource link in the chat as well.
Yes, I can do that. And Larry, please feel free to chime in if there's anything else that you want to say about the Institute overall.
Well, I think you pretty much covered everything. I think right now the only other thing is to basically look out for the email that Takia will send out at the end of the week regarding the presentations, the workshops that we have coming up in 2021.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's actually to Chandra. Is she on? I saw her name on the call. Is Chandra still on? Hello?
Hi, Cheryl. I'm here.
Hi, Chandra. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So you'll be handling all of the ISP, it looks like?
Yes, Grant Associates will manage all 8 industry sectors.
My question yesterday, they couldn't answer, but I wonder if you could. Since Futures and Options and NAF and healthcare, all of them have their own host employers, their own stable, if you will, of host employers. Will you be taking all those employers over, or are we losing all those employers?
So it's still something that needs to be decided. There will be some employers that will be shared. I can also share that those industry partners are not completely gone. If you have the resources to support them with your school budget, they can come on as vendors and still continue to support the work of CTE. And I'll also defer to Treva if there's anything else that she wants to share about the NIs that I might have missed.
Because you actually primarily handled originally engineering and computer programming, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
So we have, of course, Bayside has 6 programs, and I was making quite a bit of headway with the healthcare group and Futures and Options. And I'm wondering if that kind of is going to be lost, because they help us with the other programs that we have, and they had a lot of employers.
So it won't be lost. It's something that we will continue. It
Okay.
might look a little different, but it's something that we will continue.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you.
You as well.
And I'll just echo a bit, Chandra's being a bit modest. Some of the employers that we've had in the past, we all work together with Grant Associates, Futures and Options, and CCAP. Like, we may have shared employers. So as Chandra mentioned, it doesn't mean that the employers are lost. It doesn't mean that we are not going to support your program because it's a different NI working with you. We're very committed to supporting all programs, all 8 sectors.
All right, so I guess unless there are any other thoughts or burning questions, we will give you back 10 minutes of your day and hope that you have a really great afternoon. Stay warm in the storm, and hopefully you'll be ending this school year term out with a bang. So
Have a great afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Happy holidays to you all.
Thank you.